Welcome to another Coffee with Samso. We're here at the University Club here in Crawley on the University of Western Australia campus. We've got Impact Minerals Limited here with us today. The code is IPT. Dr. Mike Jones is the MD. Market cap of 34.38 million as we speak. Share price 1.2. Look, you were here in May, Mike, since we last spoke, but since then, two big, mineral resources come out for your Lake Hope, 3.5 million tonnes at 25.1% alumina, 880,000 tonnes of contained alumina, and you've had some soil geochem story come out from your Arkun Project in the southwest. So, Mike, update us since we last spoke.
Well, it's been a busy 4 or 5 months. Obviously, we took on the Lake Hope High Purity Alumina project back in late March, and we've basically been flat out doing the Pre-Feasibility Study on that, which includes the resource, done the heritage survey, and we've got a lot of metallurgical test work that's been in progress, and the results of that will start to come out now between today and going forward up until Christmas. So that's really been the focus of the company. It is a development project. You know, we have switched from being an explorer to being a developer, and so we're well on the road of going down that track now. And of course, there's all sorts of hurdles that that come up for permits and the rest of it. So that's been a fascinating journey for myself so far. But everything's going well, and we should have some very good results on that coming forward. So
I've got a heap of questions in terms of your Lake Hope, but let's focus on the resource. Give us a sort of a idea or what is required in terms of grade that a HPA project would need. Grade, resource, what are the numbers that we should be looking at? Oh, that's good, or maybe they need a bit more work.
No, sure. So look, HPA is high purity alumina, and that's aluminium oxide, Al2O3, and it's high purity because it has to be processed from the raw material into something that's got very few impurities, and that's because it has its end uses in a couple of niche markets, which we can talk about. And let's be frank, there's no shortage of precursor for high purity alumina. There's been a number of players in the space and many people trying to produce it from kaolin, and however our project is producing it from a different set of minerals at Lake Hope, which is what we believe is unique about the deposit. And so the resource there, which you mentioned, nearly 900,000 tonnes of alumina, most of which we believe that we can convert to HPA, high purity alumina, and at an average production rate of about 10,000 tonnes a year, and that's a benchmark level that our competitors in the space put out as part of their feasibility studies. Then you're looking at sort of 80 or 90 years production. So it's a multi-decade operation. So there's no shortage of material. It really comes down to how cheaply that you can produce the material, and that's where we think the project has a great advantage. The material that we do have is relatively high grade. It's about 25% alumina in the lake, and we're going to be able to dig that up, basically take it off site, process it in an industrial yard somewhere. We think much cheaper than most of our competitors. So when you're in the bulk commodity space, whether it be high purity alumina, whether it be rare earths, whether it be bauxite, coal, iron ore, those sort of things, you need to make sure that you're well down in the cost curve. Otherwise, you won't make it through the cycle as prices come and go. And we think Lake Hope offers a very unique opportunity to deliver very low cost HPA as we go forward.
So I'm getting from what you're saying, it's the tonnage that you have, or what you guys have shown. It's not the question now. It's more than enough.
Yeah.
The grade's up there as well. So it's not a grade or a tonnage issue. It's now about how you're processing. Is that?
That's correct, yeah. There's no shortage of material. It's going to be very cheap to dig it up, take it off site, and then it's all then about the processing and then the nature of the end product as required by the end users in the particular markets. So that's where all of our focus has been in the last few months, has been on the processing. The the unique nature of the material there. It's very fine grained. It's a unique set of minerals. It's very soluble in sulfuric acid, which means that that's a relatively straightforward processing. So again, the cost of production we anticipate is going to be relatively low compared to our competitors, and we're actually very close to putting out our scoping study, and that should be out in October. And at that point, people will be able to see what we can see in terms of the relative cost of production for HPA from Lake Hope. And it's going to be, it's certainly going to make people sit up and listen and take notice at the cost at which we can produce the material.
I noticed in your latest presentation, and I've seen this before in other HPA kind of projects, where you talk about the purity grade. So I assume that's the different products that you can make.
Yes.
Can you run through that and just, obviously that the different grades, different product, different pricing,
Yeah.
things like that. So can you run through that, what that is, and the where you guys look to be at, I guess, if that's a right question to ask?
Certainly. So in the high purity alumina space, we talk about the impurities, or how few impurities there are in the material. And that's normally described as a percentage. So 99.9% is 3 nines. So, and that can have sort of up to, 10,000 ppm 1,000 ppm of impurities. And then the 4N is 99.99%. So you've only got 100 parts per million of impurities. So that's getting down to some very fine, fine detail at that point. And most of the bulk of the use of the material is in that 3N and 4N space. That's where the bulk of the material is used in the HPA market. There are 5N, so 99.999%, and even supposedly 6 nines, which do command very, very high prices in the marketplace. However, they're not very large markets. We're only talking about a few tons a year or a few thousand tons a year max. And so you can't build a business around those very high purity products. You have to build it around the 3N and the 4N, and then if you get cream off the top, that'll be the 5N and the 6N. So look, it's a relatively straightforward process to get to those numbers, but they do command high prices if you can get there.
The other page that you had was the cost curve analysis.
Yeah.
And that obviously is which N you're after is your cost, right?
Yeah.
So where does impact see itself positioning?
Well, in the HPA space, the incumbents are predominantly Japanese and Chinese producers. And as far as we can ascertain, they're producing HPA at a cost, that's a cost to them of somewhere between 15,000 US dollars a ton up to 25,000 US dollars a ton. That's production cost. And that's because most of that material is produced from the refining of aluminium metal. So aluminium metal is normally dug out of the ground as bauxite, goes through the Bayer process, which is fairly energy intensive, environmentally unfriendly, produces aluminium metal, and then that gets sent to the HPA producers, who then refine that metal again back into aluminium oxide, and that's where they get their end result, their end product from. But over the last few years, and one of the reasons that HPA has been in the ASX mindset, marketplace, and people trying to get HPA projects going, is that they're looking at doing a hydrometallurgical approach. So the majority of which are doing hydrochloric acid leaching of kaolin, which is very different to our process. And then there's also Alpha HPA. Their code is A4N. It's worth looking at their story. They've been very successful in the HPA space. They're using a chemical feedstock to help to produce their HPA. And their prices of production are, we think, around about maybe 6, 7, 8,000 US dollars per ton. So quite a step change from the 15 to 25,000. And it's one of the reasons that Alpha HPA, I think, has been successful, because they're starting to nail offtake agreements and starting to gain traction. So we believe very strongly that our cost of production is going to be at least at that level, if not significantly lower, as we will see when the scoping study comes out. So we're talking a very disruptive approach to the entire HPA marketplace. It's being led by Australian juniors, and we think that we're going to be a significant player in that space.
So the disruption you're talking about is coming from the processing side, or the method to do it, is it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Alpha is using bauxite as a feed?
No, they're using a chemical feedstock, so they're actually using byproduct chemicals from Orica, the fertilizer and explosives
Okay.
company, plus material from the bauxite process. We're not exactly sure what that is, and they're using that then to produce HPA. They have, a bit like us, they were a junior explorer a decade ago. They came across a novel process to produce HPA. Discovered it would work on laterite clays, but then also discovered it worked on this chemical feedstock. So they've basically jumped to become an industrial chemicals company, and their market cap hit $1 billion just recently. So they've certainly been doing the right thing. And it's a novel approach, but despite the fact they're not mining, that process is still quite expensive relative to the other hydromet processes that are out there at the moment. And as I say, we believe that we will be at least equivalent to them, if not cheaper, once we get the scoping study finalised.
Going forward, I mean, talking about the process here, the disruption. Is there going to be a very low barrier of entry to this market, or is unique to the source, because not everyone's going to find a Lake Hope, etc., etc. So, what are your thoughts into this point to protect where you guys are in the future?
So look, we've sampled quite a few of the lakes in that region, and every one of them is is slightly different in terms of its chemical makeup. One of the unique things I think about Lake Hope is that it is only 2 meters deep, and then you're kind of on relatively fresh rock underneath. So it's not a big muddy pool where you can sink the drill rig and things like that. And I think that particular region, has ended up being climatically unique, and so we've got this almost unique combination of materials there. So that's the first thing, the geological uniqueness. But secondly, the process that we have is patented by Player One, who we've done the deal with, and it's a relatively straightforward process, but works very effectively. And part of the reason for that is the material is very fine grained, and so the whole thing just goes into solution very, very easily in the processing plant.
When we talk about the market, as it's very soft. Commodity price is all softening.
Yeah.
How has that affected your space, the HPA space? Can you tell us what effect that has undergone?
Yeah. Look, for the impact share price, we've come off a little bit in the last few weeks, along with most other companies, whether they're in the gold space or the the HPA space. All the market action right now is really about lithium and and rare earths, and it's one of the reasons we're keeping our Arkun exploration going, because we've certainly got significant potential for those metals there. I think the HPA space has suffered a little bit because of the kaolin producers. None of them have progressed as quickly as they wanted to, but there's a number of companies now building their pilot plants. FYI Resources doing a great job. Chemex, to name a couple, certainly getting towards that pilot plant stage. And I think once the market sees that, they also should see the success of Alpha HPA. They're a couple of years ahead of us on the track. Then out of this, the number of other players, we should start to rise up, I think, out of the back up to where we were.
Can you just remind us what the market is for HPA and the uniqueness that it may have?
Yeah, there's two main uses for HPA. First one is acts as the separator between the anode and the cathode in lithium-ion batteries and other types of batteries. So if you recall, a few years ago, the Samsung phones were exploding. That's because the separator wasn't doing its job. And so aluminium oxide, HPA, is thermally and chemically inert. So it acts as basically as a heat barrier between the anode and the cathode, but material can still pass through it to help the circuit close. And obviously with lithium-ion batteries forecast demand to grow dramatically over the next 10 years, with forecasting increasing demand. And then the second one is, bizarrely enough, it's in LEDs, so in light globes around the world. And there's obviously a big trend to remove incandescent light globes. And not a lot of people might be aware, but the USA banned incandescent light globes this year. So everyone is moving towards LEDs, and then it's increasingly used in micro LEDs in screens. So, for example, Samsung, going back to them, they've just converted all of their high definition TV screens to micro LEDs, and there's certainly a significant increase in demand for that. So those are the two main end users. There's other parts of the battery architecture, aluminium nitrates and sulfates, which Halfa HPA are producing, but we believe that we can also produce, and those markets are also increasing because of the increased demand for batteries. So there's a forecast supply deficit in 2026, 2027, and that's about the point that we believe that we should be delivering some product from our pilot plant going forward. So those are the two main uses.
Can we touch on a bit of your Arkun project? Obviously, from an exploration geologist, it looks really interesting, and that area is just slowly opening up, and you got a release not long ago that you got some geochem anomalies. Can you just give us a brief on that?
The Arkun Project is located between York and Corrigan. It's about 150 kilometres east of Perth, and it lies on a major tectonic zone or fault zone that does trend northwest, southeast, and ends up in the Julimar area to the northeast. There were some regional geochemical anomalies there and a gravity anomaly when we first pegged the project, and there's not a single drill hole in the entire area. And since then, we've done a number of geophysical, geochemical surveys, and we're turning up a significant number of soil anomalies for a wide range of metals. And our original targets were nickel, copper, PGE, and that was really being driven by Julimar. And the day that we pegged and announced that we had staked this ground, Anglo-American Corporation, they pegged about 10,000 square kilometres all around us. And so they'd obviously been thinking of acting, and we managed to pit them to the post. And that's because we think of this major structure that's very deep-seated, probably goes down to the core mantle boundary, and it's certainly the main feature that companies have been targeting. And then we're a long trend now. We may have seen that Chalice did a joint venture just a few weeks ago with a private company, Northern Resources, and basically that's on our northwestern boundary with Arkun. So again, they're targeting these structures that are running right through Arkun. The whole area is really a deformed greenstone belt, so similar to what we get around Kalgoorlie or up in the Pilbara. And so we're seeing not just potential for nickel, copper, PGEs, but also gold, and of course rare earths and lithium. So whilst it might sound like a lot of metals, it's just like having a piece of ground up in the Pilbara or out in Kalgoorlie, where it's got a little bit of everything. So we've got another 1,000 soil samples in the laboratory. Those should be back within the next 3 or 4 weeks. We've got another geophysical survey starting this week over the top of some of our key anomalies. So we're hoping to be in a position to drill a maiden program there early in 2024. In the wheat belt was the harvest. We've got the wheat is actually in season at the moment, so we've got to wait for that. We've got to wait for the crops to be taken off, and then we can get access to the paddocks. And we're hoping to provide some good results in the first quarter of next year.
It's interesting because in 2009, I was around that area looking at these rocks, and they were saying, "Oh, there's nickel and all this," and I'm thinking, "Well, geez, no one talks about this area. This must not be true." And I walked the ground, I can see obviously things that really consistent with that story. But because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, "Oh, nobody comes here. This can't be much."
Yeah.
But every man and his dog's there now, in that same area. I guess that's exploration, and that's what happens, I guess.
Well, that's right. I mean, Julimar was really the driver for all of that, and just 77 kilometres outside of Perth, and it really set off a pegging rush throughout the southwest. But people sort of tend to forget, well, there's Boddington there, which is 30 million ounces plus of gold. We've got Greenbushes, one of the world's giant lithium tantalum deposits, and then closer to us we've got the Katanning gold deposit there. That's just reached 3 million ounces, and then Tampia isn't too far away, another gold project in through there. So it's really not surprising that as more work is done, we're seeing more of these deposits being found, and of course rare earths in particular. A little bit further to the southeast, in the Esperance area and through Hyden, seeing a lot of rare earths now, coming to the fore. So that area is certainly going to emerge as another rare earth province in my view. So, and that was our Horseshoe prospect that we put out about a month or so ago, and some significant soil anomalies. And one of the things about this part of the wheat belt is that there's actually not a lot of outcrop. It's mainly covered by laterite, and so there's really been not a lot of exploration done at all throughout, in the last 100 years. So it's an exciting place to be.
Yeah. I mean, we've always said, why is Boddington there? And people
Yeah.
said, oh, just a small little island of green stones that popped out. But well, that's all history now.
Yeah.
I guess.
30 million ounces later.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Look, I've seen your presentation that you have a forward plan. Surely that would have shocked all the investors that, you have to wait that long for things to happen, right? Because we all know that things happen in weeks because the market tells us. Can you just go through that and tell us, where you've ticked your boxes and what people should look at going forward? And I'm assuming this is referring mainly to Lake Hope.
That's right. So since we got the project, the two big things that we've announced are, one is the resource. It's an indicated resource, which means we've got good confidence there. As we discussed, there's more than enough material there. It's all about the processing. The second thing is that we've actually had heritage clearance. So I think the market perhaps missed the significance of that, but basically we've been given the go-ahead that there are no impediments to mining that lake. We'd obviously need to come up with a mining agreement with the Naju people. I'm very grateful for the work that they've done with us, and which will the usual kind of agreement that jobs, training, and some form of financial compensation, and so that will come to the fore over the next 12 months, because now that that's been done, once our scoping study is out, we'll be then in a position to lodge a mining lease application. So that's going to happen in the next quarter. We've got our first meeting with the Department of Mines coming up in a few weeks, and we're going to explain what our plan is in through there, and that'll set off the mining lease application. Now, because of the unique nature of the deposit, we're anticipating, and our initial advice from our environmental and permitting consultants is that we should be able to go pretty quickly through the mining lease application process. So we're talking 2 to 3 years, not 3 to 7 years if we were doing, say, a cyanide leach of a gold project. We don't need any infrastructure put in. We don't need any water. We don't need any electricity on site. We can do it all with renewables, and it'll be campaign mining. And so from an environmental perspective, we think that the process should be relatively straightforward. So in the meantime then, the feasibility studies, obviously going forward, we're trying to optimize the process. Once that is done, we'll be in a position then to start building our first small pilot plant, which may be, 10 tons, 20 tons, 50 tons of HPA, and then obviously scale up from there. So look, it is an exciting time, but I've been around a while, and pre-feasibility test work's not the sexiest thing in the marketplace. So we certainly are in a position to keep going with Arkun. One of the other advantages of Lake Hope, and I keep talking about them, is that the cost of the pre-feasibility study is like a couple of $1 million, and we'll get 43 cents in every dollar that we spend back from R&D, because it is so unique. And so we are in a position that without running our cash down significantly, we can still continue to explore on our Arkun project.
I think you're right. Now, a lot of people underestimate the heritage part of the story, because that's, once you've got past that, you don't say that it's easy road, but that's one of the biggest hurdles.
Yep.
Working with First Nation and making sure everything's cozy, I guess.
That's right. And look, the Naju, they're based out of Norseman. There's a long history of mining, there, and they've got agreements in place. They're relatively pro-mining, obviously subject to, not disturbing any heritage. And, we look forward to working with them.
And one of the things that we spoke about early on is that, you mentioned that, Lake Hope's this perfect ore body and everything else, right? Is that still the case? Have you learned more for better or worse?
Well, fingers crossed that everything's still going according to plan.
It hasn't changed overnight.
That's right. Hasn't changed overnight. We're getting very close to our first sort of big batch of HPA, from the process from Lake Hope, and at that point, then we'll be really confident that there's nothing untoward in the lake. So far so good.
Look, as we all know, investors are washed with all sorts of products out there. There's lithium, there's copper, and how should they view impact in terms of who you guys are?
Yeah.
Obviously, you like you said, pre-feas is not very sexy. You're going through that process, and sometimes investors forget what you're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, how should they view impact?
Look, we are on the road to development, so we're not as speculative now as we were. There's still obviously risks involved, but I think as the story evolves, people will see that hey, there's a good chance that Impact could be a serious player in the HPA space, and I keep referring back to Alpha HPA. They have shown what can happen if you get it right in the space, and their market cap, as I said, hit $1 billion recently. They started off market cap like ours, 10-20 million, only 5 or 6 years ago, and so they've gone on that journey and done very well for their shareholders. So I definitely think that it's worth following. We've also still got the a bit of the sizzle from the exploration at Arkun, so there'll be some big drill programs in the new year on that, and who knows, we might get both things right, so that'd be great.
To do devil's advocate, questions, because obviously nothing's as rosy as we say. So why should they believe that Impact will deliver the end story that you're talking about and not be another ASX company that ends up as a shell?
Yeah. We have been around for quite a while, and I think we've done a good job at keeping the company going because we've stayed active. I mean, we've been through everything, the GFC, Fukushima, the downturn, through COVID, and we've always delivered, exploration results. We've put the money into the ground. We haven't had the bit of luck that you need to find the world-class deposit, but we're always out there looking to do that. I think trying to do anything in between is a waste of time. We're not here to be a 50,000 ounce a year producer or a 100,000 ounce a year gold producer. That's a waste of everyone's time, and you can see that in the track record of many companies. So I like to call it the devil's vortex of junior ASX listed companies, because most companies don't go anywhere, and they get sucked into the vortex. They don't deliver the results, and that's no fault of anyone's, apart from the fact it's just hard to find a world-class ore body. It's just very difficult, and most of us, 99% of us, are out there trying to do the right thing, and so you've got to escape that vortex. And I truly believe that the Lake Hope project is going to get us out of that. We've just got to market the story, and importantly, if you're looking for where the critical thing is for people to focus on us, is to get offtake agreement. We need to get product in front of customers, go through their qualification period, sign some offtake agreements, and then once that starts to happen, people will see that we're gaining traction, and we've got a chance of being a significant player in the space.
I think that explains it really well. I think this 99.9% of us tried to do the right thing, but
yeah,
it's not that easy, as we all know. Look, in your opinion, I mean, with interest rate looking, it's more likely to have less increases like we've had in the past, and there's some potential visibility of a lowering trend. Do you think this is a good time for companies like Impact, for people to look at people like Impact?
Yeah, look, as interest rates come down, then it really affects things like the discount rate, on our scoping study, etc. And so it will make projects, look a little bit more attractive, as obviously as the interest rates come down. And I think that so companies like us that are in development, it's a very positive thing, going forward. We're probably in for a period still of structurally high inflation. Getting back down to the 2% is probably a bit of a dream at the moment, especially with energy prices still climbing. But I think probably 3 to 4% is going to be the go for the next 5 to 10 years.
I think I agree. I mean, the where inflation was a dream in the past.
Yeah.
And then when we got there, it was, oh, geez, this is great. This is the norm. But 3 to 4, I think, is pretty okay,
Yeah.
so to speak, right?
Yeah, I mean those rates, as we all know, were heavily manipulated by the by the market, by the Fed, the Federal Reserve, in particular, and now it's broken out. It's like the genie's out of the bottle. It's actually quite difficult to to get it back in, and we know that the only way that they're going to reduce the relative amount of debt is to inflate it away. So no matter what they say, 2 to 4% is a good number for them to deflate the debt over the next 10 or 20 years. Otherwise, we're going to be in serious financial trouble.
Before we conclude, can you tell us why investors should put their hard-earned cash into IPT?
That's right. Look, we're on the road to development. We think that we're going to be a significant player in the high purity alumina space. We are going to be able to produce it, we think, significantly cheaper than most of our competitors, and that's a great place to be in the bulk commodity space. You really need to be one of the lowest cost producers, and then you've got pricing control, and you'll make it through the cycle. It's going to be a pretty exciting story over the next couple of years, and we shouldn't forget that we've still got a bit of the sizzle with our Arkun battery metals project, and so a lot of news flow coming left, right, and centre over the next couple of years. So definitely put us on the watch list and pick your moment of entry.
Which is always the hard part, isn't it?
Timing's everything.
Look, thanks for your time. As we go, before you go, it's the coffee time. KIC is a group of Indigenous business in our sector. Thank you to Florence Drummond for introducing us and sponsoring the coffee for you guys. It's a token gift. So thank you. Till next time, Mike.
Thanks very much, Noel. Yeah.
And hopefully we'll get more news and look forward to Arkun news, because your Lake Hope's going to take a while to get traction, I guess.
So yeah, look, well, the scoping study is going to be out in early October, and at that point, an analyst is going to be able to put a number on us, and I think that's going to be a real catalyst for re-rating. So keep your eye out for that news flow coming forward.
October. Any dates?
Can't be that specific.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're just waiting for the last bit of test work that we can put into the announcement, and then we'll be ready to go. So,
okay. Well, thank you, and till then.
Thanks very much, Noel.